You know that moment when you're just like scrolling through your phone and you come across a picture of your dog from, I don't know, 5 or 6 years
Oh,
ago?
yeah. Cool
You
enough.
look at that photo and then you look down at the dog sleeping at your feet and it suddenly just hits you.
Right. It's a very quiet realization.
Exactly. It's a quiet, almost sneaky realization of just how much white hair has completely taken over their muzzle. But, what's truly staggering isn't the gray hair itself, it's what's happening beneath it.
Which is a massive biological shift.
Right, because by the time a large breed dog turns 7 or 8, their cells are turning over at a rate that fundamentally changes their biology. I mean, that endless ball of energy that used to test every single boundary in your house is now operating on an entirely different physiological operating system.
It is a profound transition, and for anyone caring for a dog, that realization usually comes with a real pang of anxiety.
Ah.
There's this creeping dread that you're entering a very difficult, heartbreaking chapter where your primary job is just, well, watching them decline.
And that emotional reality, that quiet anxiety, that is exactly where we are starting today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, but a really important one.
Oh, for sure. We have an incredibly rich stack of veterinary material today. We're specifically extracting insights from an audio series focused on senior care for Dobermans. Now, while the timeline in this material is geared toward that kind of large athletic working breed, I want to be clear right up front.
Right, this applies to everyone.
Exactly. The mechanisms of aging, pain management, and cognitive support that we're exploring today, they are deeply relevant to you if you are caring for literally any aging animal.
Because at the end of the day, biology is biology. And our mission today is to completely reframe that anxiety you just mentioned. We want to move past the fear of an aging pet and arm you with actionable, highly practical knowledge based on clinical realities.
And the source material has such a great perspective on this.
It really does. The central thesis of the veterinary material we're unpacking today is actually quite beautiful. It argues that aging is not a disease to be feared. It's a privilege to be managed.
A privilege to be managed. So what does this all mean? Like, how do we move from just worrying about our dogs to actually managing their biology?
We do it by building a framework. The ultimate goal today is to give you the clinical tools to spot the very subtle differences between normal, expected aging, and actionable health issues.
Which is a very fine line sometimes.
It really is. And to do that, we have to establish what your senior dog actually needs from you right now, both physically and mentally, based on what is actually happening inside their body.
Which means we have to start with the timeline, because before we can get into the how of senior care, we have to define when that stage actually begins.
Yes, and that timeline is critical.
And if you own a large dog, this shift happens significantly faster than a lot of people are prepared for. A Doberman or, any dog in that 70 to 90 pound range is clinically considered a senior at around 7 to 8 years old.
Which often catches people completely off guard. I mean, 7 sounds incredibly young if your frame of reference is, say, a Chihuahua or a small terrier who might easily bounce around until they're 15 or 16.
Right, small dogs seem to live forever.
Exactly. But large breeds age on a fundamentally accelerated timeline. It really comes down to cellular senescence and early growth rates. Large dogs grow at an explosive rate in their first year of life just to reach that massive adult size.
Oh yeah, they basically double in size every few weeks as puppies.
Right. And that rapid early cell division essentially taxes their cellular replication limits much earlier in life.
Right.
So the 7-year-old large breed isn't just a slightly older dog. They are in a genuinely different biological life stage than a 7-year-old small companion dog.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that biological reality completely changes the rules of engagement for veterinary care. Once a large dog hits that 7-year threshold, the recommendation shifts from annual vet visits to going twice a year.
And that's a hard shift for some owners to accept.
Totally. And it's critical to understand this isn't about upselling you on vet bills. It is because metabolic and physiological changes in a senior dog accumulate exponentially faster. It's like driving an older car.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Normal wear and tear is totally expected, but, it's just old isn't an excuse to ignore the check engine light when it starts flashing.
What's fascinating here is how human nature works against us in this specific window.
Yeah.
People see their 8-year-old dog taking, a bit longer to stand up from their bed, or they notice the dog is a bit stiffer after a walk, or maybe less enthusiastic about fetching a ball.
Yeah, and the immediate human response is just to shrug and say, well, he's just getting old.
Exactly. which on the surface feels like a perfectly logical conclusion. I mean, we all get old, we all get stiff.
Right, my knees hurt every morning, so I assume my dogs do too.
It feels logical, but in veterinary medicine, he's just getting old, is arguably the most dangerous phrase an owner can use. It becomes this massive, dangerous catch-all bucket. People inadvertently lump normal aging and actual progressive disease into the exact same category.
And those are very different things.
Extremely different. Normal aging brings gradual expected changes to their energy reserves and their cellular repair. Disease brings changes that are specific, significant, or rapidly progressing.
Right, and when we use getting old as a blanket excuse for every single symptom, we just stop looking for treatable underlying conditions. Like if a dog has a treatable thyroid condition that's making them lethargic.
An entirely manageable osteoarthritis flare-up.
Exactly. Shrugging that off as just old age literally robs the dog of interventions that could massively improve their daily life. We basically force them to endure discomfort because we assume it's just an inevitable mandate of the calendar.
Precisely. Aging itself is not a disease. That is the foundational distinction. Lumping a highly treatable inflammatory condition in with normal aging means your dog suffers unnecessarily.
Which is heartbreaking when you realize it's preventable.
It really is. And that is the exact physiological reason those twice-a-year vet visits become critical. A veterinarian is trained to look at the biomarkers and distinguish the normal, gradual slowing of cellular metabolism from the rapid onset of an active pathology.
And speaking of slowing down, the most immediate, visible place this biological shift reveals itself is in their physical mobility, right? The wear and tear.
Yes, that's where you see it first.
You start seeing hesitation before they jump into the back of the SUV, or like you said, a very pronounced morning stiffness. This is also the exact stage where past genetic or environmental risks like early hip dysplasia or minor joint injuries from their chaotic puppy years really come home to roost.
Because the joints have carried a large, highly athletic body through thousands of miles of running, jumping, and hard stops. The physical wear on the cartilage is finally becoming clinically visible.
Now, I want to push back on the standard advice here, because this is where human intuition really clashes with canine biology. If a dog is visibly stiff in the morning, if they clearly have arthritis in their hips or knees, the absolute strongest human instinct is to enforce bed rest.
Oh, absolutely. We want to wrap them in bubble wrap.
Right. We want to protect them. But the clinical consensus heavily corrects the misconception that older dogs shouldn't exercise. Honestly, telling an owner to keep walking a dog with aching joints feels incredibly counterintuitive. Use it or lose it sounds downright cruel when your dog is limping.
It does feel harsh, especially if you view the body as a machine where parts simply wear out from friction.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of how canine joint anatomy actually functions, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Think of the cartilage in your dog's joints like a kitchen sponge. Yeah, a kitchen sponge. When they sit entirely still for hours, that sponge dries out. It gets rigid, brittle, and highly prone to damage. The actual physical act of movement is what compresses and releases that cartilage, which allows it to soak up synovial fluid.
Which is the body's natural joint lubricant.
Exactly.
So complete bed rest actually starves the joint of its own lubrication. We are literally causing the very stiffness we are trying to prevent.
Exactly. And beyond the joint capsule itself, you have to look at the muscular scaffolding surrounding the hips and knees. When you enforce complete rest, you trigger rapid muscle atrophy.
Because they aren't using the muscles at all.
Right. And then the dog loses the vital shock absorbers that keep those degraded joints stable. Losing hind-end muscle mass is catastrophic for a large senior dog.
Yeah.
It destroys their proprioception, basically their awareness of where their feet are in space.
Which is why you see older dogs slip so much.
Yes, it makes them incredibly unstable, prone to slipping on bare floors, and terrified of going downstairs because they literally lack the muscle strength to break their own weight.
Wow. So preserving that muscle mass is non-negotiable, but clearly we aren't taking a 9-year-old Doberman on a grueling 10-mile trail run.
No, definitely not.
The focus shifts entirely to adapted exercise, shorter, far more frequent walks, moving on gentler terrain like grass or packed dirt instead of asphalt. That keeps the joints lubricated and the muscles engaged without causing high-impact trauma.
And that shift to adapted exercise triggers a massive physiological domino effect that leads us directly to nutrition. This is a critical biological feedback loop.
How so?
Well, because we're intelligently adapting their exercise to protect their joints, they are naturally burning fewer calories. And on top of that, their basal metabolic rate is also naturally dropping as they age.
And here's where the math gets brutal. If their metabolic rate drops and their daily calorie burn drops, but the scoop of food in their bowl stays exactly the same as it was when they were 4 years old,
They are going to gain weight rapidly.
and obesity in a senior dog is not just an aesthetic issue, right? It's a profound medical crisis.
Oh, it's terrible. Adipose tissue fat is not just dead weight. It is biologically active tissue that secretes inflammatory cytokines.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it actively secreted inflammation.
It does. So not only are you putting 20 extra pounds of mechanical stress on a failing joint, but you are also pumping internal inflammation directly into that joint. It dramatically accelerates osteoarthritis.
That is a terrifying compounding effect. But, the inverse is also true in the senior years. A lot of dogs experience a drop in their olfactory senses, or they have dental pain, and they actually lose their appetite.
Yes, that happens quite a bit too.
They start dropping weight and losing that critical muscle mass we just talked about, which is exactly why regular objective weigh-ins and body condition scoring are so vital. You literally cannot set a senior dog's diet on autopilot.
You really can't. You have to be proactive. But the physical changes, the muscle atrophy, the joint degradation, the weight fluctuations, those are the macroscopic things we can easily observe.
The obvious stuff.
Right. But the most profound changes happening to a senior dog are often completely invisible. We're talking about the subtle degradation of their senses and the physical changes inside their brain.
Okay, let's start with sleep, because the question, is it normal that my old dog sleeps all day, is practically a universal anxiety for owners.
Is probably the #1 question vets get about seniors.
Right. And a gradual increase in sleep is a totally normal function of a slowing metabolism. They simply do not have the same cellular energy reserves to regenerate. But the source material makes a very sharp clinical distinction here, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. A dog taking longer, deeper naps is normal. But a sudden dramatic shift where a dog is lethargic, unresponsive to stimuli, or, impossible to rouse,
Yeah.
that is not aging. That is an active physiological crisis that requires an immediate veterinary intervention.
And sleep changes tie intimately into canine cognitive dysfunction, or CCD, right?
Yes, they do.
And CCD is a real, measurable neurological condition. Biologically, it is incredibly similar to Alzheimer's disease in humans.
It really is.
Yeah.
We see the exact same buildup of beta amyloid plaques in the canine brain. It physically disrupts their neural pathways, and the symptoms are heartbreaking.
What do those look like in a dog?
Well, they might get trapped behind furniture because they actually forget they can walk backward. They exhibit completely altered sleep-wake cycles like pacing and panting all night and sleeping all day. They might even stop responding to cues they've known flawlessly for a decade.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because as humans, our instinct is to project complex human psychology onto what is actually a biological degradation. We totally misinterpret these invisible sensory changes.
We do it all the time.
Like you call your dog from the kitchen, they don't come, and you think, wow, he's getting so stubborn in his old age. Or they suddenly refuse to walk into the backyard at night, and you assume they're just being defiant.
When the reality is deeply physical, dogs lose specific frequencies of hearing first. They literally cannot hear you calling them from 2 rooms away.
It's not stubbornness at all.
Not at all. Or consider their vision. The tapetum lucidum, that's the reflective layer in the back of their eye that gives them excellent night vision that degrades as they age.
So the backyard is actually scary to them now.
Yes. A dog refusing to go into the dark backyard isn't being defiant. They're experiencing profound visual uncertainty. They're terrified of tripping over the porch stairs because they can no longer resolve depth perception in dim light.
Recognizing that distinction, that these are physical sensory changes, not behavioral rebellions, I mean, that completely shifts the dynamic of how you care for them. It replaces owner frustration with deep empathy.
It really changes the entire relationship for the better.
And when it comes to the cognitive decline we mentioned, there is this incredibly pervasive myth that you just have to passively watch their mind fade. The whole you can't teach an old dog new tricks nonsense.
We have to completely discard that idea.
Yeah.
Neurologically, older dogs are highly capable of neuroplasticity. Gentle mental enrichment is one of those powerful tools you have to stave off cognitive decline. But the key word, again, is adapted.
Right, we aren't teaching a 10-year-old dog agility weaving. The focus shifts from physical load to olfactory and cognitive load.
Exactly. The olfactory bulb takes up a massive portion of the canine brain.
So simply taking their dinner and scattering the kibble in the grass, forcing them to use their nose to hunt for it for 20 minutes, that fires up entirely different neural pathways. It deeply engages their brain, completely tiring them out neurologically without putting an ounce of strain on their hips.
That kind of low-impact, high-reward engagement improves quality of life across all species. It's so beneficial.
Okay, so armed with an understanding of the biological wear and tear on the joints and the invisible degradation of their senses and cognition, the final step is translating this into the physical space they live in. How do we alter their environment to support this new biology?
And the good news is you don't need a degree in veterinary medicine to make these changes. We're talking about basic physics and proprioception.
Like the slipping we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. As we discussed, an older dog loses the micromuscle strength to quickly correct a slip, which means slick hardwood floors or tile suddenly feel like walking on a sheet of black ice to them.
Which has to be terrifying.
It spikes their cortisol and creates massive anxiety.
Yeah.
But simply laying down non-slip runner rugs over the high-traffic slick areas in your house completely changes their daily confidence.
It just gives them their grip back. It's such a simple fix. Similarly, introducing ramps or shallow stairs for the car or the couch eliminates the need for them to generate massive kinetic force to jump. You are actively preserving their remaining joint cartilage by removing the repeated heavy impacts of landing.
Yes, these environmental shifts are relatively easy to implement, but they lead us directly into what is arguably the most complex and anxiety-inducing aspect of senior dog care.
Which is?
Understanding and managing pain.
This is a massive challenge purely because of evolutionary biology, right? Dogs are predatory animals by nature, and they are evolutionarily wired to mask weakness and pain.
Because showing vulnerability in the wild is a death sentence.
And that stoicism doesn't just turn off because they live in a comfortable suburban house. A human with severe arthritis will vocalize, limp aggressively, and basically guard the joint.
Oh, we let everyone know we are in pain.
Exactly. But a dog with the exact same level of severe joint degradation will often still wag their tail and attempt to bring you a toy. They are actively suffering while masking the physiological signs.
And this is the part that keeps owners awake at night.
Oh, for sure. If a dog is biologically programmed to hide their pain at all costs and a wagging tail doesn't actually mean they're comfortable, how is the average owner supposed to know when it is time to step in with medical pain management? Like, are we just flying blind here?
This raises an important question, and it is the entire reason veterinary medicine emphasizes the concept of establishing a holistic behavioral baseline. You cannot wait for a yelp of pain or a catastrophic limp to initiate pain management.
So what do you look for instead?
You have to use your deeply established knowledge of your dog's standard daily microbehaviors as your clinical tracking metric.
You're looking for the subtle deviations, postural shifts maybe, like a dog that used to sleep tightly curled up, but now only sleeps sprawled flat on their side because flexing their spine hurts.
Yes, or a sudden reluctance to be brushed over their lower back.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or excessive lip licking or panting when the house isn't even warm, which are classic signs of a cortisol spike from pain.
Exactly. You are tracking the deviation from their specific normal, not an objective, universal standard of canine pain. And a vital rule of thumb to apply here is the velocity of the change, right?
Velocity is everything.
A gradual behavioral shift that unfolds over 6 months is typically the slow march of normal aging. But a sudden deviation, like a dog that suddenly refuses a meal or wakes up aggressively pacing or refuses to cross a specific room over the course of 3 days.
That is not aging. That demands immediate clinical attention.
And when you do bring them in, the vet isn't just looking at the single symptom. They execute what's called a holistic quality of life evaluation. They map mobility, appetite, engagement with the family, and restfulness against the pain scale.
But more importantly, they rely on routine diagnostic blood work.
Which is the invisible safety net we mentioned earlier with those twice-a-year visits. Blood work allows a veterinarian to look directly at the internal organ function long before a dog shows you any behavioral symptoms.
Exactly. They are looking at specific biomarkers like SDMA levels for kidney function or specific liver enzymes.
So before a dog ever shows you they're excessively thirsty or completely lethargic, these biomarkers can tell a vet their kidneys are beginning to struggle. That buys you months or even years of proactive dietary and medical management.
It's all about catching the internal biological shift before it becomes an external crisis.
Which really brings us full circle to the emotional core of this entire deep dive. Watching a dog transition into their senior years, seeing the physical slowing down and the cognitive shifts, it requires a lot from us.
It is incredibly emotionally taxing to track these baselines and constantly adapt their world.
It is. But this profound transition is deeply normal. If we lean into the management, if we adapt their kinetic output, adjust their caloric intake, support their neuroplasticity with olfactory enrichment, and manage their environment, a senior dog can enjoy a deeply rich, engaged life for a very long time.
The physical mechanics of how you care for them shift dramatically, yes, but the bond, the depth of the relationship, that only gets stronger.
It absolutely does.
And, as we wrap up this analysis of senior canine care, I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
Through this deep dive, we've explored how modern veterinary medicine handles aging. It relies on holistic baselines. It utilizes routine, proactive blood work to monitor internal biomarkers. It prioritizes adapting the environment and the mental load to protect the physical body.
Aiming to catch subtle physiological changes long before pain forces an intervention.
Exactly. The entire model is built on addressing the reality of aging before the body sounds the alarm. So what if we adopted this canine veterinary model for our own human aging?
Oh, wow. That is an interesting thought.
Right. In human healthcare, we are incredibly reactive. We almost always wait for a painful symptom, like a failing knee, a severe cognitive slip, or overwhelming fatigue to finally drag us to a doctor.
We really do. We just wait until it hurts.
But what if we evaluated our own aging through proactive, holistic baselines? What if we routinely tracked our own daily mobility, our neuroplasticity, and our internal metabolic markers before anything actually hurt? It's a fascinating inversion to think about. We invest so much time, empathy, and scientific rigor into managing the twilight years of our pets, but maybe our aging dogs actually have something profound to teach us about how to gracefully and scientifically handle our own.
That is an incredible point. We owe it to our dogs to manage their aging as a privilege, but we absolutely owe it to ourselves to look at that gray muzzle in the photograph and realize we require the exact same proactive care. That is all for today's deep dive. We will catch you next time.